Hi, everyone. Toby here from Audacy Ventures. This morning, we talked about the different SAF production pathways and the cost competitiveness and sustainability considerations on each. And today, this session, we're focusing on the challenges to meet the 23 billion liters of demand that I think a lot of the airlines and even like airports have committed to in that time frame. Obviously, any big mobilization plans like this doesn't come without a lot of their own different challenges. I'm very excited here today to discuss with our panelists that represents views from both the industry, the investment community, and also from the startup perspective. With that in note, I'd like to throw out my first question, which is, so today, as of last year, we have around 300 million liters of production. This is 23 billion we're talking about. How do we get there? How do we even start this in the next 3 years, Stephane? What is the state now, and what do we see developing in the near future that can sort of help us get there?
Sure. First of all, before we start, we forgot to ask if someone in the audience could take a picture of us so we can put it on our LinkedIn. Is that possible? Can someone do that? Thank you very much. So my name is Stephane. I'm general manager for Lanzajet, EU and UK. We have the ambition to build about 1 million tons of sustainable aviation fuel production by 2030. We're here to help and support the aviation sector to decarbonize their activities. We're a technology company that have developed a alcohol to jet pathway, so to convert ethanol to jet. It's a technology that was built over the course of 12 years in collaboration with the Department of Energy in the United States of America. So to answer your question, if you take what is produced today, there's probably no more than, so I'm talking in thousands of tons, probably no more than 200,000 tons put to market as of last year. If you take into account all the SAF announcement in 2025, there's probably a combined 8.5–9 million tons of SAF announced, of which less than half of them do not have the final investment decision. So there might be only half of those announced capacity to come and see the light in 2025. So it means today 200,000 tons. By 2025, if you only take the FIDs, probably no more than 4 million tons. And then we'll still need those 300 million tons by 2050. So that's a big multiplier. To give a bit more color on the projects that are announced, you have about 80–90% of them that are mostly HEFA technology. Why? Because it's the commercial available technology today. It's kind of mature. But you start seeing, as you look at the project post-2025, you start seeing a lot more alcohol-to-jet, gasification, Fischer-Tropsch, and e-fuel projects. Just meaning that to get to that 2050, 300 million tons, you'll need all the technologies possible. It needs to be as agnostic as possible as far as feedstocks and technology. So.
Iris, what do you think? What are the pinch points for us getting there? What are the sort of, it's a tricky road to navigate. Like what are the main pain points that you see and potentially how, what hope do we have to overcome these?
Yeah, so the main pain points, I think, first of all, Stephane, that was quite a good comment that we will need all the technologies that we have. So in my opinion, it's not going to be one winner producing all the SAF in the world. That's just not how it works. And yeah, I'm head of science at Extantia, but here today to represent our portfolio company, Eneratech. Tim, the CEO, as a matter of fact, couldn't be here today because he's currently on a fundraising trip for their upcoming Series B round. Tim and I kind of naturally gravitated towards each other when we first invested in Eneratech. Both Tim and I have an academic background, and we both used to work during our research years on processes to convert carbon dioxide and hydrogen into fuels. So I feel honored today that I'm here to represent him, and yeah, I think I'm also speaking from his perspective to really say that, yeah, to solve the pain points, we will need multiple technologies and not just one. And maybe also a bit of a controversial topic to bring up. I think we need to collaborate much and much more with the oil and gas industry. They have, in a way, created the current climate problem that we have, but they also have all the knowledge, all the expertise, all the blue-collar workers that we actually need to scale up SAF. So quite curious to hear how my other panelists think about this. But I would like to see more collaboration with oil and gas. And yeah, let's say have the engineers and the expertise that we have and help them scale up the renewable technologies. So.
If I may comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I agree with you, and I think definitely a collaboration will be blessed. And there are a few areas I think can be collaborated with oil and gas, and of course from the engineering knowledge, but also from a financial perspective. They are very wealthy. They are eager to find a way to decarbonize the planet, and we need to embrace them and their energy transition funds into the game, and to find the right way to collaborate with them and understand that they are part of the solution, as you mentioned, and not, I mean, of course they created a problem, but now they should be part of the solution. Otherwise, it will be much harder. We need to try and leverage these relations, their knowledge, their abilities to find the right solutions.
Yeah. Whereas when you say the collaboration is, obviously one thing they can do is help solve the financing problem, invest in some of these projects, but I think you said like there's not enough integration on the skill sets or sort of working, sort of cooperating teams on the technical aspects in some of these projects.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not just financial support, it's also support with upscaling, so using the knowledge, expertise, literally the workers that they have to scale up these technologies. And yeah, so not only financing, also expertise, and maybe even reusing existing infrastructure that we already have in the chemical industry, and putting in renewable resources instead of fossil-based oil and gas.
Yeah, I see.
No, I just wanted to add, it's kind of happening already, and I talk for Lanzajet, for example. In our portfolio shareholder, we have Suncor and Shell, both oil and gas companies, and they've been very supportive. They put equity into Lanzajet, and they're looking at deploying projects in different geographies, and they are very supportive of our efforts to scale up the technology, and we're working hand in hand with their process engineering team to look at ways we can improve process, reduce risk, increase yield, get better economics, to win-win for everybody. So I think they're quite engaged, but we need more of it, and more capital driven towards renewable energy investment, and more of those types of collaboration. But the point is, we won't be able to do it on our own, and to be successful and to decarbonize the aviation sector, every stakeholders of that sector will have to work together, and that's what is happening. So we just need more of it.
Yes, and conferences and events like these hopefully will bring us together more. Arno, what do you think? In your journey, could you, please tell us a bit more about your company, and are you receiving any technical support or any help from oil and gas?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Arno Zimmermann. I'm co-founder and CTO of Spark eFuels. Our focus is on slurry FT to make e-fuels for the aviation industry, but really drive down costs. So we see ourselves more like as the next generation type of technology that'll be implemented in the end 20s, early 30s, where we more focus on how to really get the costs down of SAF, which is an absolute necessity in order to have larger scale adaptation in the market. Have we received support? I mean, absolutely. I think it's two ways. As a young engineer, I think the clean tech revolution is a massive threat and a massive opportunity. It depends on how you see it. We have to reinvent kind of the whole energy system. And we already see it, Ørsted or Lanzajet or Neratec, they're all doing it. But for example, Shell is closing down the majority of their refineries in Europe. There'll be a lot of skilled labor experts freed, and they are afraid, obviously, to look for new jobs. So this is an opportunity to get these people on board. We already receive, obviously, help because there's a lot of skilled engineering companies which are in the oil and gas sector and chemicals, and for them, power to fuels is just another oil and gas conversion technology. So it's kind of, I think it's the novel oil and gas sector. So that's that. And also, it translates into sustainable chemicals as well, because these are side products. So streaming into oil and gas and chemicals, it's just about sustainable hydrocarbons.
Yeah.
So, like on my notes, I think obviously the supply is a problem. Is that the technology readiness of the different pathways also like a problem, as we mentioned, and also feedstock, securing feedstock for these different pathways is a problem. But I think from Arno, what you're working on in the feedstock is actually the renewable energy source that has the potential to sort of be less limited by these factors.
Right. So we came kind of from the end, like the way you learn how to design a product in like the business community is, you look on the price, you look on the environmental impact, and then you try to find ways on how to really curb down the cost, even though the technology doesn't yet exist. And this is, I think so. I definitely double down on the point that we need all types of technologies available. There is room for biomass-based sustainable aviation fuels. It's obvious. These are cheaper, easier to make. These are already oils, so why not using them? And using on-grid electricity, hydropower in Norway. This is being developed. So we see the first projects coming to fruit, but this is a tremendous challenge. The EU trilogue yesterday has finally agreed upon the mandated adoption of sustainable aviation fuels in the EU, which is going to be 1 million tons in 25 and 10 million tons in 35. And luckily for the PTX community, it'll be 500,000 tons in 2030. So that's like 6.5 years from now. There's not a single project in FID in PTX. No. So this is a tremendous opportunity, right? And that's the point. Like, are we limited? Yes. Obviously, in PTX, we need the sustainable power. We need the sustainable electrons and hydrogen capacity. So electrolyzer production capacity. There's tremendous challenges. But I think, let's just get there. We need some, agreed upon targets. We need also some penalties. So we need some sticks, also some carrots. And then I think the whole train starts moving. So we see Lanzajet is investing. Neratec has started, you can mention the groundbreaking thing that was last week, if I'm correct, or this week?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is it's starting to move.
Yeah. So last week, Neratec officially commissioned their largest e-fuels plant in the world. It's based in, close to Frankfurt, Germany, and it will produce 3.5 million liters of e-fuels once it's up and running. And with that number, it will actually beat by 25 times the currently largest e-fuels plant, which is Haru Oni, based in Chile. So they're quite happy with that. And to come back to your point, maybe let's say, for example, what the cost drivers are like of all of these processes. And I believe maybe there's a bit of an overlap in terms of technology between Neratec and Spark e-fuels in that sense. But what Tim always likes to say is e-fuels are nothing more than liquid electricity. So for Neratec's process, I think for probably all the processes that make fuels out of carbon dioxide and water, electricity will be the main cost driver, right? So for Neratec's process will be about 80% of the total cost will be renewable electricity. And that's the beauty of it, because I think processes, for example, what Lanzajet is doing, will have a different cost driver, because it's a different process, right?
What's driving really our cost is the cost of the ethanol that we're going to be sourcing. But the beauty of it is we're agnostic on the type of ethanol that we can use. And today you can make ethanol from pretty much everything. So you have, of course, that first generation type of ethanol, that sugarcane type from Brazil, which nobody wants really to hear too much about, especially in this part of the world. But one of our partners, Lanzajet, they're converting off gas from steel mill into ethanol, and then we take that ethanol to jet. We're partnering in the UK with another company that has a pyrolysis process. They're taking woody waste residue or agricultural waste through pyrolysis, making advanced ethanol. In the same time, they're producing a biochar that acts as biosequestration. So you can almost have like a carbon negative advanced ethanol. The name is Nova Pangea. And the name of the project is Speedbird Project. We all have those cool projects. The first one is Dragon Project in Wales. This one is Speedbird Project. And so the challenge for us is really securing the ethanol, partnering with people producing ethanol, and having the right ethanol with the right carbon intensity, addressing legislation based on the geography where we're going to be deploying those alcohol to jet. And I might not have mentioned that earlier, but we're in the midst of deploying our first commercial facility in Georgia, a 10 million gallon facility, so about 30,000 tons. And we should be up and running by the end of this year, which would make us the first alcohol to jet commercial facility in the world. Yes.
And I know there are a few more to follow.
Yes, absolutely.
Including the one in Australia. That,
Yes, we have projects in Australia as well. Absolutely.
Guy, what about from your investment sort of remit and the portfolio companies or potential investment targets? What sort of challenges are they seeing, and what sort of steps or direction are they going to solving these problems?
Yeah, so I think there are some challenges which are common to all different technologies, and I'm totally agree with you. There will be a lot of winners, a lot of different feedstocks, but let's speak even about what will be the price, and will the price for a SAF barrel will be subsidized, and how much? And the uncertainties of the amount of subsidies will go in Europe to hydrogen, yes or no? Will it follow the IRA, and how? And all of these questions are affecting then the economics down. I mean, whether the site will be more concentrated, like big site, or will be fragmented to small sites. So I think having some certainties on that area could really contribute the entire ecosystem, any technology. So this is like, I would say, macro challenge that you can see. But then if you go to other technologies, you need to see how others are vested in order to increase the production of SAF. So if you're going to a lot of the new companies, they are relying on green hydrogen and CO2. So then you need to see how electrolyzers will be evolved, and what will be the efficiency of the electrolyzers will be embedded in these SAF projects. So there is a lot of general questions that will affect then the actual product of one barrel of SAF. And this is like a common uncertainty going to different type of new technologies and different approaches. And I think this is part of a new market getting into shape. And this is some of the struggles and the uncertainties that we have as an investors in such a new topic. And we need to embrace it, of course, to be aware of it, but not to be, we shouldn't make it like avoid us from investing in such, because we need to understand these uncertainties probably will be solved this way or another.
Now, I think now that we just touched upon the role of regulations and incentives, I want to ask the panelists, are we doing enough, or which regions are doing better than others in terms of the policy incentives, or you know, there's the top-down and then the bottom-up approach, or making it mandatory, or actually stimulating it from the supply side. I might want to start from the far end.
Yeah, well, I think you touched base on it a little bit earlier. You have two different approaches. You have the carrot approach, the US, the way they about incentives, and the EU with a mandate, an obligation, and a penalty. So yesterday was a big day because the trilogue on the Refuel EU, which is part of the Green Deal, the Fit for 55, The Parliament, the Council, and the Commission kind of came to an agreement on an obligation to incorporate certain level of SAF all the way to 2050. So that gives a bit of a certainty on the market end. It gives visibility exactly on how much volumes we would need all the way to 2050. So that is very good as far as investment opportunity to de-risk. But you're in an environment with a penalty. So that is the penalty level that will kind of determine the level of the SAF market price in the region. And that penalty is going to be, they're still debating over how they're going to calculate it, but we have a bit of a taste of it in France because they started an obligation with a penalty as of last year. And today the penalty is about 4,200 euro per ton. So, which puts the SAF market price in France at the jet plus that penalty, give and take. In the US, it's a completely different approach where you have a lot of incentives, national incentives with the RINs. Thanks to the IRA, the Inflation
Reduction Act.
Inflation Act. You also have a national incentives on SAF blending tax credit. And then on the top of that, you have certain states like California with an LCFS system, and more recently, the state of Illinois adding to all this more incentives. And to top it off, you also have some incentives on the CapEx and production level, so production marketers. And when you add up all these incentives, it makes the SAF price pretty much the same, at the same level as fossil. So you have two different approaches where in Europe, penalty, high price of SAF versus the US, an incentivized environment with a price level for SAF that is fairly equal to what you pay for jet fossil. So,
I think
and those are the only, from my understanding, the only two existing systems in place. A lot of other regions and countries are thinking about it, but nothing has been officialized and formalized yet. So today it's just Europe and the US for the time being.
I think it's more kind of a philosophical debate, actually. So what works better, you know, getting candy as a reward or avoiding to get grounded in a way? So in the end, I think we'll see a combination of both. So it will be, or we cannot do without either of the two. So it will be a combination of penalties if you are a polluter and rewards if you're not a polluter. And time will have to tell what works out better, the penalty system or the reward system in a way. But I think what it maybe ultimately also comes down to at the moment, how much are fuel off-takers willing to pay? So we briefly discussed that before the panel. Like,
yes.
What does everybody think about the green premium? Like, are fuel buyers going to pay a green premium? And if yes, for how long will they, let's say, keep up with that? When is the moment that they're going to say, no, it's too expensive, I want it to be cost competitive with the fossil-based alternative? What do you think about that?
And I'll add on that, with your permission. You described a secure demand, but this is only part of it because you need to know what will be the price for that demand.
Sure.
So it's great to know you will have an off-taker, but you need to have, let's say it can contribute a lot to have like a minimum price. What will be the minimum, at least? Then when you do their calculation, it's really supported. And I think somehow it relates with the green premium and whether this is a sustainable way, us as an investors, to look at a business. Honestly, I prefer when I do my maths not to count for the long run for the green premium. I understand this is something support an industry. It is a great thing, but I can't rely it will last forever. I can't rely that regulation won't change. Government and I think popularity of different technology and trends are changing. And for me as an investor, I want to invest in a field that has a sustainable way of existing without the green premium.
Sure.
Yeah.
It can be a mitigation.
There could be a green premium, but maybe without the incentives. So to make it, you know, and the UK is working on a kind of a hybrid system, and they're thinking about maybe putting in place a floor ceiling with strike price mechanism, which would favor also investment in the space.
But in the end, I mean, it's always cheaper to put some costs on society, right? This is why we ended up with climate change, because it's cheaper to extract the oil, refine it, and then just combust it, and we just leave the CO2 in the atmosphere, because up until recently that didn't bother anyone really. So it's always easier to do that instead of assembling the oil, such as in the e-fuels case. It's obviously harder. The question is, what is the cost of CO2 avoided? And if we have a carbon price, I know this is a common repetitive topic probably in this conference as well. If there's a reliable one, then this is fine. Because a sustainable fuel gives you two functions, as they say in LCA. It gives you the fuel, and it gives you a sustainability service. And these two things need to be counted together so the price is higher. It's just the question of what's the cost of CO2 avoided. And I think if you're somewhere in the 100 to 300 euros per ton range, then you have interest. Right now, we're significantly above that, unfortunately. So this is why I'm always urging, like, hey, let's take down cost. And I also have another question for you, so especially to the investment community. Do you think there's sufficient momentum in the innovation pipeline? Do you think there's enough capital flowing into like large projects, medium, and then also new technologies? What do you think?
Well, I think, let's say, capital flowing into the space and then having like early stage, medium stage, and late stage projects, that depends very much on what type of investor you have, right? So like a growth investor will not invest in a pre-seed startup. But I think in general, sort of capital flowing into the climate tech space has certainly increased over the past years. And even with sort of the crisis from last year, there was still flowing money into the space. So yeah, what do you think? Do we have enough capital?
Actually, I do see, like, for the good, interesting companies, even that field, I see like rounds which are oversubscribed. So I think, at least at the companies we looked at, of course, the macroeconomics effects, and I can't really point whether it's the interest in SAF or is it like the macro condition that makes rounds last a bit longer and the cycles are a bit longer than in the past. But at least like from my community, my colleagues, I see a growing interest in that field. And also for us, we tapped into this like around less than a year ago. Before that, we were not actively looking, and now we do. So
yeah.
I think the International Energy Agency, IEA, recently announced that they tried to measure the amount of investment required to get to that net zero globally, and they said it's basically $4 trillion per year. And Bloomberg came a bit later with another perspective, and they put their number at 6 per year, all the way to 2050. It means that every year, that's the amount of money we need to invest in every sector globally, to decarbonize planet Earth and get to that net zero 2050 objective. And today we're about 1/3 of that. So it's still a long way to go, I guess. But this is a general number. This is not specific to the aviation sector.
Yeah. And Arno, I think to come back to your point, what you were saying in the beginning, like problem versus opportunity. And I think a lot of investors are now slowly also changing their mindset and seeing climate change as an opportunity. So sort of saving energy, saving emissions can bring you money, and it can be a financial opportunity. So I do think that the incentive and the capital flowing into the space, we will only see an increase in the coming years.
Yeah, and for a lot of those companies, to decarbonize their activity is kind of their license to operate. So for aviation sector, they have no choice but to show their determination to decarbonize their activities, and they will have no choice but to, of course, they're going to renew their fleet, replace the old fleet with new fleet, because it's a reduction, it's more efficient engines, so a reduction in consumption of jet. But at the end of the day, I think you talked about it this morning, 65+% of the effort will come from sustainable aviation fuel, with a liquid fuel. Hydrogen, electric might be part of the solution, but by 2050, 95% of the planes, they will be flying on liquid fuel. So SAF is the biggest lever for the aviation sector to decarbonize their activity. And that's also why they're willing to pay that premium. And I believe they will continue paying that premium. The question is, who's going to pay at the end for it? It should be the consumer. Will we see an impact on the decrease on flying around the world? Maybe not. I mean, you have other part of the world in Asia Pacific, for instance, China, India, Southeast Asia. That's where the growth of the aviation sector is, and where most of the fuel by 2050 will be consumed. What are they going to do about it? So it's one thing to have this part of the world doing it with the US and Europe, but it's a global problem, and we're going to have to find a harmonized way to get things off the ground everywhere on planet Earth. So,
yeah, I think one of the challenges when we talk about regulations is, APAC, there's still not too much that is in place, and I think they're looking for other regions to follow. And it's just looking at the audience here, I'm one of the few APAC sort of funds that are investing in this space and hope to play our part into stimulating that. And with the investment dollars and the regulation, we're quite a little bit behind, apologies. And in terms of investment dollars, going back to the previous question, I refer to one of my favorite songs is like Never Enough. And
that was what I was hoping for,
Yeah, I think that the scale of the problem is just too big, and the sooner we steer that, it's like always think about like the Titanic, right? It takes a little bit to turn, but we need like all that momentum to come in and really turn the ship around. So that's like covering on the financing side. Like, are the banks doing enough? Like, are they? So we talked about, we represent the equity side here. Do you feel like the banks have they taken an interest in SAF from the projects that you're seeing or working on?
Well, I think the banks, they will do their part when the technology is de-risked and when there is some certainty on the market. I mean, today you cannot go to the bank and say, I want a loan so I can build up my plant. Our first facility in Georgia, it's been financed by our shareholders, as well as, so I mentioned two of them. I'm going to name all of them, so there's no jealous. So I said Suncor, Shell, Mitsui, Japanese company, British Airways, and Lanzajet. And then to complement what we needed to finance our first facility in Georgia, we had a loan guarantee from the Department of Energy in the United States, as well as some money from Breakthrough Energies and $50 million from Breakthrough Energies and another $50 million from Microsoft. So that money didn't come from the bank. But I believe as we demonstrate that first-of-a-kind plant and the technology works, it might be much easier to then go to a bank and do some regular project financing. But that's where it's complicated for early-stage company trying to demonstrate the technology is you need to find that money to demonstrate it. So it's a chicken and egg. It's like, it's too risky, so you cannot go to a bank. So you need the oil major, the venture capital to believe in you and trust in your technology and the path and the narrative. And we're lucky because at Lanzajet, we get that part done, but it's not the case for a lot of companies out there. So we need to give a chance.
Yeah, and that's of course this concept of being bankable. You can only get there as a startup when you cross the valley of death, sort of holding the hands of venture capitalists often or other financiers. And at least Eneratech is also funded by grants, for example. So that's another financing option if you're in the early stage, like non-dilutive grants, equity as well. And then later on, when you're bankable, you can get like a loan or like debt financing or project financing, as you were saying. But it's more this valley of death that needs to be crossed first if you're a startup and doing a new technology. Yeah.
The guy nodding in agreement.
It's been said.
It's been said.
I mean,
Arno, because you're like quite early stage still. How do you see this? Like, what's your path to bankability in a way?
Yes, thanks for the question. So I mean, it's going to be a bit longer than in other cases, but in our case, we are putting together a demonstration project which really goes from Electron to Jet SPK. the first time fully integrated, and to also see the interdependencies between the steps, and using our different reactor technology approach. And yeah, it's largely grant financed. And if you have some seed money lying around, we are looking for seed money. So thanks for mentioning this. We are actually raising right now. So if you got 2.5 to 3 million, then please come talk to me. But no, essentially, and I think there's a really interesting grant policy in the federal state of Germany, is that it really goes from R&D to really development, deployment, and then also scale up. They're putting together an e-fuels, it's a 2 billion euro opportunity that really covers all the stages up till TRL 9, and then also contracts for difference. They're just putting this into place. It has been like the third call just closed. So there's really momentum in there, but I think it is really dependent on the region. And Germany does that because they have a strong chemical industry historically, and they see this as kind of, they kind of already see the ship sail a little bit with hydrogen, and they want to like make sure that at least some conversion technologies can be engineered in the country, and keeping the industry and also the engineering alive, because in the e-fuels case, and probably also in the biomass case, where are these facilities going to be located? They're probably not going to be located in Central and Western Europe, because the electricity price is just way too high, and then we're looking into all these off-grid solutions. So a lot of the value creation will be distributed globally, which is great for many countries. And this is a way that a Western European country can participate in value creation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and in terms of, I think we're talking about like financing, early stage financing. My experience is that because at the project level, the SAF project is still classified as infrastructure rather than a technology play. There's where I started my career in Macquarie, the infrastructure funds have just gone like way big, and they don't look at anything from, it used to be 1-2 billion, now they're like 10, 20, 50. So for early development stage projects, and it's not a technology company, that development funding at the start is like really sort of quite difficult, because also because of that size problem. Do you guys agree with that, or?
Yeah, it is, but I think you mentioned Germany. In the UK, you have grants at the European level. You have some. In the US, you have lots of loan guarantee possible. I think corporates are getting involved also, where they're partnering to put together funds. I'll give an example, and this one. In Australia, we have a project that we work together with a developer called Net Zero, and part of the project will be financed by a fund that was put together by Qantas and Airbus, because they have an appetite for SAF, because they want an acceleration of the production of SAF out there. They want to become a catalyst of SAF production and using it. So they put their money. They put together a 200 million Australian dollar fund to support and finance projects in the region to get some SAF locally in Australia. So there's a variety of ways to access money to fund those first of a kind or smaller facility. But because of the types of feedstocks that we have to process, none of those facilities, except for the HEFA that are the 1 million tons, will be very, very large. It will be more of a decentralized type of system. So it might be a bit difficult to get the economy of scale of putting those humongous millions of tons facility, which is part of a challenge also in the circular economy world.
Yeah. And there's even another way of financing it, is that, especially cargo is interesting. What I heard from cargo, and please correct me if you've heard something else, but they can't get enough SAF. So there's companies that haven't yet built a facility. They have some kind of idea how the facility could look like, and they already pre-sold the output. It's a little bit like net negative technologies, but that's really comfortable, so it's a way of financing it. But there's so much demand for SAF, So if you, for example, in the audience buy something with green shipping, and this is like directly SAF offset or insetted, this actually contributes a tiny, tiny fraction into the aircraft, into a ship, into a car of sustainable transportation. And this, like, while it might feel like it doesn't make a difference and it's just a drop in the ocean, the drop is already for companies like ours a gigantic, opportunity swimming pool to really get out your muscles and start to grow. So there is like this price premium. There is some. This is another opportunity to maybe have to sell SAF today. That's already possible, but it won't be the 100%. To go the first couple of percent, that might be possible, but then you'll see. So just my pledge: if you fly, maybe think about not insetting by trees, but maybe also thinking about using sustainable aviation fuels.
Yeah. Do you see any direct benefits from that as a startup? Like, if that happens, like, are you planning to have like connections to incentives like this to kind of scale up your production?
Yeah, so you can. So, for example, Deutsche Post DHL, they have a direct purchasing program, same as DB Schenker. We have an LOI with them. So, yeah, we see a lot of interest from these companies, and they source it globally. So, if you produce in South America, then can source it there. It's a great opportunity, and they're all looking for SAF. So it's just there's just not enough supply, and we hope to be, same as you, be part of the solution to supply more SAF. So we can bring the emissions down, and that curve of the emissions, which keeps on rising in aviation, needs to like slow down and then finally go downwards. Yeah. We're not there yet. We're still increasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think. The IATA fact sheet says if we don't, if SAF wasn't part of the solution, like we will go from 3% contribution to much closer to the 8 to 10% range. So definitely something to look out for. Whilst we've got a few minutes left only, do we think that, so part of the topic is 23 billion, but by 2030, do you think, so like getting this actual supply there's up, but the timing is also part of the challenge. Any concluding comments on this timing issue?
I think it's possible, but it is going to be a challenge, especially given some of the restriction that Europe gives around the types of feedstocks that would be eligible for sustainable aviation fuel. But yeah, it's possible, but we have to start acting now.
Yeah, I think it's not impossible. Let's put it like that. It's a challenging target, but it's probably not impossible, given that we, let's say, diversify in terms of technologies. So as said in the beginning, I don't think it should be one technology making all the SAF. It should be a combination. So in regions where there's cheap renewable electricity, we should maybe do processes that sort of, yeah, that drives, that where the price is driven by electricity, like yours or like Enertex. And in the regions where we have a lot of sustainable biomass, we should probably do things like HEFA or maybe like alcohol to jet. So ideally, with the right support in place, collaborations with oil and gas, giving the expertise and the knowledge that we need, and diversifying the technology that we use, I think it could be possible, but it will be challenging. Let's see.
Yeah. I think we should not necessarily focus on the, I would say, midterm goals. And of course, we shouldn't focus with the existing and only the mature technology in order to match and to get to this. We should still invest in the new technologies that will contribute us achieving the long-term goals to the 2050 or 2040. And I mean, we should have the eye on the ball there and make sure we are not neglecting new technologies because we are focusing on 2030 goals. So it should be a mix. We should support this and support the new technology that will allow us to go to the higher decarbonization of the aviation.
Long-term future.
Yeah. You got to do everything in parallel.
Yeah. And
That's right. And I think maybe as a last point, which I find really interesting, Europe wants to be climate neutral in 2050, but sets its SAF goal a target of 70%. How does that work? Like, so the 2050 goals need to be 100 and additional net negative emissions. So the absolutely, and then we think backwards and see, what technologies can we employ at what time, and it's obvious that bio-based SAF will come first and is currently rolled out, and then we have on-grid, and then we have off-grid types of plants. So I think this is an amazing opportunity, and is that impossible? I'd say no, give us the right resources and let's do it.
Yep. Please, anyone in the audience interested in SAF, please go and speak to Arno. With that, I thank you for your time, panelists, and well, let's work hard to achieve that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.